name's Brad Hoffman, and for my final exam, I'm going to do a little bit of talking about basic knife skills and how to sort of use how to use a knife safely and effectively. And after that, we're going to talk a little bit about browning. Tonight, we're going to make fajitas. I have some of the ingredients still in the fridge, but the main ingredients we're going to be working with are the onions and the chicken. So the first thing we're going to do is I have the onions sliced up to save a little time, but we're going to do a little more chopping here. So the first thing we're going to do is grab some of these onions, get them down here on the board. And the thing we're doing is we want to get everything on the board and ready before we actually start picking up a knife, because we don't want to be tossing a knife around while we're trying to handle the food. Trying to stay safe, you want to get everything as ready as you can before you actually start wielding your knife. So now that we're going to get to the actual knife, what we have is a 8-inch chef's knife, French knife, depending on which verbiage you like to use. The thing you want to notice about the way you hold it, keeping your fingers at the top of the handle, pinching it along top, and then wrapping the rest of your fingers underneath. Get in there, make sure you get a good grip on it, that way you got as much control and you can handle it the best way possible. When holding the food, the thing you want to look out for is you want to look out for your fingers. Nice sharp knife, fingers get in the way. So the thing you want to do is make sure you're curling back your fingers when you're holding your food. That way it keeps your fingers out of the way and it gives you a nice backboard to sort of keep your knife up against. That'll ensure that you get a nice, consistent cut the whole way through. It'll make sure that your cuts come out the way you want it to and you have as much control over the knife as you can. So the first thing we want to do before we start cutting is get a good stance. You want to drop your leg back a little bit, that way you have plenty of room to work, get good arm motion. And so that's when you start to approach your food. So again, we're going to come in with our curl fingers. We want to keep the knife on the board as the best we can. Again, knife right up against the fingers, and then just get a nice, smooth, rotating cut. You want to just keep rotating that way. It gives you a consistent cut, and it gives you that sort of control you need the whole way through. So again, we're going to come up, keep the fingers back. We're going to just keep cutting, trying to keep the knife on the board as much as you can. Keep your fingers out of the way, and that'll give you the sort of pieces that you want, and it'll give you that consistent cut. Now, if I wanted to, since I'm feeding it with just my fingers, I can definitely get it into smaller cuts. I can take it however I want, and my fingers do all the controlling. I'll finish cutting the rest of the onion here in a little bit, but since we have the chicken cut up, next thing we would do is we go to the pan. The pan's heated up right now. What it's going to do is the heat in that is going to break up the sugar and carbohydrates that are in both the onion and the chicken. They're going to undergo a browning effect because of that, and it's a little different for every food, and it's definitely different between these two foods. With onions, the browning effect is going to occur for two reasons. You're going to have one that's going to be caramelization. That's where the sugars in the onions that are breaking down are going to react with other sugar parts and sugar and carbohydrate parts that are breaking down, causing different compounds to be built. As those compounds are built, that's where you get different aromas, different flavors, and that's where the sort of browning color and look starts to come from. At the same time that's happening, you're going to have the Maillard effect that's occurring. That's where those broken down sugars start reacting with proteins and amino acids, and that gives it, again, another unique sort of flavor, aroma, and taste that you're so used to having when you use your caramelized onions. Now the same general thing is going to happen with protein. You're going to have the sugars breaking down again. The difference is that they're going to react almost entirely, if not entirely, with just the proteins and amino acids. That means that you're going to get, compared to the onion, it's going to be another distinct flavor. It's going to give you a different aroma again. And it's going to give us that browning color and look that we're looking for when we cook our food. So between the two of them, they do go through the same process. On the most general level, it's the heat breaking down the sugars in a non-enzymatic browning, and that's going to lead to these different combinations. What really changes and alters the differences is what's inside of these foods. What makes up the foods is going to change the way that the foods end up. With that said, I'm going to get these thrown on, get my dinner ready. Thank you for a great year, and go Bucks!